I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited that I was invited to this because anytime I get a chance to visit with anyone about ABLE, I create more advocates for the program. So when we're done with my talk, you all are now schooled in ABLE and you are ABLE. So that's part of the deal.
I did hand out a little folder. It's just a little bit of our program overview. As you can hear, my background is pretty diverse. I did come from a farming family near Crete. I had worked in vet clinics since I was the age of 13 before labor laws were into effect, so that tells you how old I am. My passion was veterinary science. I went to the University of Nebraska. My dad was a dean and director and eventually vice chancellor at East Campus. No pressure. But I did attend University of Nebraska pre-vet. Now, I didn't have anyone in my school telling me how much math and science you needed to have for vet school. So vet school was pretty hard for me. I was under the impression I'd be working with animals right away, out there doing my thing. My advisor said, no, you're 4 to 5 years out for that. My face dropped. I wanted to work. I wanted to be out there. Had the heart-to-heart talk with my dad, and he said, Steph, Curtis, vet tech program, go get your associates in applied science. I'm proud of you. That was a great moment for me to have my dad say, I'm okay with that. He holds a PhD. Went to Curtis, excelled, A+ student, easiest thing I've ever done in my life. Practiced for 10 years. Hands-on career, evolved into pharmaceutical sales for veterinarians. Another great career. Then I got the opportunity to go back to university, tell my story to students, work for Curtis, say, hey, it's okay if you're a hands-on learner. So when the ABLE program came open, it was hard to leave the university family. But this was a true fit for me. It was something I could be passionate about, something that I could associate very heavily with. It's nice for me to be able to tell my story and be proud of having an associate's of an applied science degree. I have every opportunity to go on, continue my education. It pulled me away from my ABLE program, not willing to do that. I want to give everything I can to the kids of Dawson County right now, and actually we're expanding beyond that because I go out and I train other counties on how to start up an ABLE program. That's really exciting for me to see because a lot of our people in our county commute to other counties to work. If we build too many walls around the ABLE program and leave it just for Dawson County only, we're leaving out some neighbors. We're leaving out some potential for these students to live in Dawson County and commute back and forth. We got to always remember that. So that's why the ABLE program was a perfect fit for me. You can see our mission statement. And when I started with ABLE, there were a couple different mission statements. I thought that was key. Why that was key? The mission statement changed during economic times. I noticed the first mission statement was a little bit different than the one that was applied 5 years later. So we have to change. We have to change the way we're doing programs in schools with what is happening economically. When the ABLE program started, things were way different. And if we would have had a cookie-cutter program in place, I don't think it would be as evolved or as successful as it is today. Now, the curiosity about the ABLE program is, how does this work? Where does the funding come from? You know, how are you part of each school? The schools that I work with mainly are the 3 biggest in Dawson County. The program is open to all the villages and small communities, but the 3 largest schools I work with are Cozad, Lexington, and Gothenburg. And they actually fund me to be part of their school. We developed a 3-year contract. They signed a 3-year contract. And so every year in February, they work this into their budget for fall, and they pay to have me part of their curriculum. Does every school use me the same way? No. When I first started, I knew the diversity in the schools with working for the university. I knew that each community was different, and I knew my student base was different, and my parent base, which is a very big deal. If I don't get parents on board with, a 2-year degree is okay, they can eventually get their 4-year degree. They don't hear those things all the time. They went to a 4-year school. My kid is going to go to a 4-year school. If I go in there and say, hey, this this student right now could probably make more than the 4-year degree graduate in this electrician's degree. And so it's education. But when I first started ABLE, I did something, and Darla, I'm going to put her on the spot a little bit. I went out, Darla has an amazing program. And my executive director is Jen Wolf, and she said, you know what, I think you two need to go spend some time together. Just so happened Darla had a business and industry type tour, very large. I mean, when I first saw it, all these buses pull up, my heart was pounding. And she was calm, cool, cucumber, just putting all her students where they needed to be. And then I got to sit on the bus with the kids and see what they were seeing. It was so impactful to see our employers reaching out, to see our employers giving up time, which is sometimes more valuable than equipment. The time that they gave those students, the intimate setting that they had, I took that back and I was fully excited about what I needed to do. But I changed it up a little bit. I got scared of how big that was.
About twice as big now.
You know what, it is, yeah, so I need to come out and help you.
I have a great team of about 18 people that help.
And I at that time was pretty much the one-man band. I have people that can help a little bit, but it's dabbles. And so I didn't have that huge lineup of people to help me. So I went to each school and I said, how about elite mini academy tours? What does that mean? Students have to vie for a position to go on this tour. It's limited to 20. It's not based solely off grades. It's based off attendance. If attendance is bad, why? Are they working? That was okay on my book. I understand that. A lot of these students are holding jobs in high school to support their family in my region. Is their attitude good? Are they good to the teachers? Are they good to the counselor? That meant a lot to me to go on these tours. And do they have a vested interest in what we're going to talk about that day? We launched this year, and it was with Gothenburg Public Schools. We had a healthcare tour. We started out with mortuary science. We went to the death first, and then we ended at the hospital. But we saw everything that day. Every kid came out with a mentor. Every student came out with some type of internship. If they do go on to college, they're welcome to come back and do a paid internship. I just don't want to see a job shadow where a student's standing in a corner. I can't handle that. It's not good for my employer. It's not good for the student. It creates too much of a distance. I need that mentorship. I need a partnership, and we're starting younger. These were all sophomores. And I also go into 5th grade now and teach soft skills. So you're hearing a lot of the same thing, and I think the same things we're going to reiterate on are how the programs are now getting closer and closer due to a revision process that is happening. And the ABLE program is revision. Once you hear what Rich has to say about revision, this is my Bible. I don't go anywhere without this. I've helped all 3 schools some way, somehow do the revision process. And if your community is going to go through this, get involved. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to see teachers get excited. It's wonderful for teachers to sit in a room and hear what other teachers do. They didn't know it. They didn't know that was part of their curriculum. It's really bringing them together, and then it's educating our community. We had a community meeting, Greg Christensen, ours, and there were so many aha moments during that meeting. The biggest ones were the soft skills. It scared them. A lot of them didn't know what soft skills meant. They deal with it every day. We were throwing this term out. A person raised their hand and said, I don't understand what you're talking about. And so as soon as I said it, they went, oh, that's what we deal with all the time. Don't they learn that at home? Nope. It's a different world. We need to work that into our curriculum. I work with workforce development through CCC. And the #1 leading class they're requesting is for soft skills. It's interpersonal skills. And so we're seeing it in adults, young adults, our youth. And if we get in there younger, which the ABLE program strives to do, it's more of a reality check of where they're going to have to be by the time they graduate. Which ties in to hands-on learning, ownership. The big thing here is they have ownership. That's the number one word I heard here today. There's responsibility and ownership that will help them with their soft skills. So there's not a lot of boundaries to the ABLE program. I like it that way. It's allowed to evolve of what's happening. If I set up too many boundaries, the revision process would have been really hard. But it wasn't. The school that was the most successful, it was the most fluid. I think they will probably be on the top list of getting things done, has worked really closely with ABLE. So once you get out there and you see what's happening with the revision process, and your community is actually engaged and your community is being educated on the nuts and bolts of what needs to be done in our schools, it comes together. They become the catalyst. It's all connected. So ABLE is a hands-on, get into the schools. It's not sit behind a desk and look at a computer screen. Just get in there, talk to the kids. I'm kind of the reality check when it comes to mock interviews, doing the soft skills. I'll come in as the worst person ever and make them interview me. And how uncomfortable is that? It's uncomfortable for them. Then I'll come in as the best person. Then we practice. But it's something we're having to start so young. You wouldn't think my 5th graders would need that right now. They do. I have to become a little bit of a female Jim Carrey to get it done, because their energy level, I might take a little sip of 5-hour energy before I go into confession, but they do. They're on a different level. Their attention span, I can go about 3 minutes on something, then we have to do something fun. But now that I've done this for 2 years, I'm now seeing the 7th grade kids, and they're like, "ABLE lady." I'm like, "Yep. We're going to practice shaking hands today," and they are so engaged. You just don't think that would be something you go into school and do, but you have to. This has to be part of our career and tech education, the soft skills. I can't say how important that is, but I see it every day. I see my juniors and seniors graduating, and they still have the cell phone in one hand. And not that cell phone use is bad, but I've had them, pull them out when I'm talking in class, and we make an example out of them. It's something that their employer is not going to tolerate unless that's their job, to be social networking, and sometimes it is okay. But the ABLE program can be whatever you want for your community. I have traveled to Custer County, where they are implementing a coordinator, and Phelps County, I think, will eventually implement some type of coordinator, and then Lincoln County has also approached me too. So, they see what happens. They know that each school cannot hire a career-type coordinator person, so it makes more sense to split the time between schools, have your manufacturers help out. I mean, it's not hard for me to ask for them. It's not so much monetary, it's just their time. I need them. I need their partnership. So if the ABLE program, you have all the kind of nuts and bolts of what we do. I won't list through everything because we are a little bit short on time, but it's a need for any school, and I think you could probably, if time allowed, implement it 1st grade through 12th grade. So that's ABLE.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You bet.
There, are we good? All right, good. Well, I'm Rich Cott. I worked at the Department of Education as the State Director for Career Education. I want to start off by extending apologies from Dr. Bloomstead. Matt, he really, I don't know how many emails I got back and forth from him. The legislature, of course, this is a short session, so things are moving rapidly. And of course, today is the day Senator Adams brings up the accountability bill, so Matt kind of needed to be there to deal with school accountability. So he extends his apologies. He has a passion around the connection between education, workforce, and economic development. He's lived in the economic development world. He gets it. And I think you're going to see some great things coming from Dr. Bloomstead in terms of bridging between workforce needs, economic development, and where our state's K-12 and higher ed systems are going to go. So anyway, on behalf of Matt, he extends his apologies. I want to give you just kind of a 30,000-foot look of what we're doing in career education in the state of Nebraska today. You know, it was interesting. There was a lot of conversation earlier about the perceptions of what career and technical education used to be called vocational education. We've not outlived the stereotypes yet 100%. We're getting there, but there's still a lot of stereotypes. It's for those kids. I can tell you, if we look at the demographic slices of who takes career and tech ed courses in the state, it's not. We parallel the student population. In fact, the average high school student in the state of Nebraska, before they graduate, will take 4 to 5 career tech courses in their high school career. We have according to our federal law, we have participants, and we have a thing called a concentrator. A concentrator is a student who takes at least 3 courses in a given area of study. Of our graduating seniors, over 1/3 of our graduating seniors are concentrators, meaning that we really do have a lot of students engaged in career and technical education in the state. And we're pretty proud of that and pretty excited about that. Maybe? Maybe not. Do we know, anybody know about this? How about this? There we go, that'll work. When the device fails, use your finger. Our focus is continuing to be both college and career readiness. And college, we mean anything, any kind of education beyond high school. It could be a certificate, it could be 2-year, it could be 4-year, it could be a professional degree. And college, a lot of times for a lot of people, instantly tracks to a 4-year degree. And we're trying to educate people to say, when we say college and career, we're talking about the skills, the knowledge and skills it takes for you to be successful in your chosen occupation, whatever that is. This is our model that we've been working with. A couple of years ago, Harvard Graduate School of Education came out with a report called Pathways to Prosperity. Some of you may have seen it. And it really talked about the disconnect in this country between where students are going and what they're majoring in terms of education and where the jobs are, and especially where the jobs are going to be at in the future. And we really bought into the concept because as we look at what happens in a lot of Nebraska communities, the attitude has always been just get to college, just to get a degree, and you're going to be fine. Well, the reality is the economy's changed. And it's not just get a degree, but it's make sure you get a degree in the right area. Make sure you align with your passion, your skill set, your aptitude, so that you can have a long and successful career and grow through. So this has become our model of how we're doing the work here at the department. I just want to walk you through a little bit and tell you some of the things we have going on. From world-class career technical education, a couple of things we did. Over the last 3 years, we've spent about $750,000, federal dollars, that we get through our Perkins Act, redoing all of our course standards. We raised the rigor, we aligned them, and we started that process. Usually we start with what do we offer in an introductory course, and then what. Well, we went backwards. We brought in business and industry and post-secondary education and said, what do students need to know and be able to do when they arrive at your doorstep? And then we built the senior level course, the capstone course, and then we went down to the mid-level course, and then we did the intro course. So we backward mapped. And it's been tremendous because all of our curriculum now aligns to post-secondary expectations of those knowledge and skills. We also just finished a crosswalking to academic standards. What that means is a business teacher, an industrial tech teacher, family consumer science, agriculture can look through their curriculum and they can identify where they reinforce academic standards. So that's pretty important. Programs of study, that's that sequencing of courses. We've done a lot of work with that. And a lot of conversation about soft skills. We have the career readiness standards, and you have a handout that's coming around that identifies those. And you can kind of look through that. These were adopted by both the State Board of Education and the State Workforce Investment Board. Our mission is to get purposeful instruction around these standards, so that when every student walks across that stage and gets their diploma, they also understand that these are the expectations from business and industry to be successful in their career. Show up on time, take responsibility, know how to solve problems, know how to communicate, how to work on a team. We have assumed that they get those skills kind of by osmosis or something, I don't know. We also know it's not happening. The #1 complaint we get from business and industry is around soft skills. And employability skills. So we're looking at how do we purposefully kind of reinforce those. And I put them up here just so you can take a look. They're pretty straightforward. And these were developed by business and industry. We pulled about 100 business and industry people together for a day and a half, and they wrote these. They said, this is what every student needs to do. We did that in 2009. We then took a year and validated it with HR groups, et cetera. So we're pretty proud of what these say, and we're working now to get these implemented within the school. Steph mentioned the revision process, and you have a flyer, I think, about revision. Looks like this, and it has the schools on here that have participated in revision. Revision is actually a 5-part process. It's a year-long study, evaluative process, where a school really takes a look at what are we offering? What kinds of things do we offer within our Career Tech program? And are they the right things? What's our K-12 career guidance program like? How do we start talking with elementary students, middle school students? How do we work with parents? What's the career guidance aspect like? And it's all built around Nebraska's workforce needs and economic priorities. So the revision process has really been successful. We're in year 2 of it. At the end of that process, we have a small amount of federal dollars that we're able to put out in an action grant, so schools can actually apply and get some dollars to help implement the changes that they've come forward. But those changes have to be aligned with high skill, high wage, high demand jobs, and they have to be aligned with Nebraska's workforce needs and economic priorities. We don't fund things that are not part of that matrix. So really, the whole purpose of revision was to get our career tech programs in alignment with the workforce and economic development needs in the state of Nebraska. And because we just had never really done that. And and we have some schools in here that participated in revision. If you are interested in that, please get a hold of us or contact your school. We're going to have an application process come out again here in about a month. Schools can apply. We pay the cost. I use federal Perkins dollars to pay the cost of substitutes, of the cost of going through revision, so that it doesn't really cost the school district anything other than some time and effort. There's a community meeting, and as Steph will tell you, this is one of the most powerful ones. When you get, and I think Carol at Kearney as well, when you get the community together and they start talking about here's what we're doing, but here's what our needs are, so how do we bridge the gap? And that has been probably the most phenomenal part of what we can do. So this has been a really successful process. We do have a piece of legislation that Senator Jim Smith put in that'll be up for hearing next Monday to provide some additional money towards the action grants. So we're hopeful and we'll see where that one goes for us. Career academies. Hey, we're in one. Hot topic across the state. If you followed the news at all, of course, Lincoln passed their bond issue, so Lincoln Public Schools and Southeast Community College will be doing something very similar to this. On Southeast campus, unbelievable, they're talking about 500 students in the morning, 500 in the afternoon as a total number of students that might be available on that campus. There'll be program offerings in each of our 6 career fields, so kind of an exciting time. We got the building designed, but now it's time to go to work and figure out what the curriculum looks like. But again, all focused on high skill, high wage, high demand jobs in Nebraska's workforce and economic priorities. So we're pretty excited about where that can go. There's some things about career academies that I think are pretty incredible. One of them that we kind of helped build 2 years ago is at Omaha Bryan. And if you know anything about Omaha Bryan High School, they're like almost 90% free and reduced lunch. It's a majority high school. So there was a lot of interest in starting an agri-science program. The agri-science program that they built is around biotechnology, and it's around food science, and so we have partners like ConAgra, Pioneer, DuPont Pioneer, Monsanto, because they're desperate for technology, people who have a background and understand agriculture in terms of the growing of things, as well as then the science, the heavy science. So when the first year we opened that academy, we worked with them. It's an application process. It's a sophomore, junior, senior level academy. They had 100 applications. They took 60 on year 1. At the end of year 1, 58 of them were still there. One said, not for me. One, they said, not for you. So that happens, you know. So anyway, so they went through year one. What's unique about the academy is that it also has an aligned academic course. So not only were they studying the ag, food, natural resources, the ag science, they had an English class where everything in English was taught in the context of agriculture, food, food science. They worked with ConAgra. They read scientific papers about food. They read technical material. They wrote technical material. So year two, we're bringing in a new class. They had 200 applicants for the next 60 slots, so we're growing in popularity. So this year they're into year two. We've got a sophomore class and a junior class. They've added the aligned science and social studies, and ultimately it will be a fully aligned contextual academic course. So when those students enter that academy, all of their academic courses will be taught in the context of agriculture, food, food science, biology, biotech, that kind of an environment. We were adamant about we want some data. We want to test this thing. So we did some benchmarking before they ever started. At the end of year one, for the students who were in the academy, and we just did the climate studies that a school typically does, at the end of year one, there was significant difference in terms of student attendance off the Richter scale. No place had they ever seen kids show up for school as regularly as they did in the academy. Discipline, erased. There were no discipline issues with the academy kids. Engagement with teachers, on and on and on. Unbelievable what happened in terms of how much more those students were engaged and motivated to be in school. And it was based on the structure of something they're passionate about. They see a career opportunity at the end. They have tons of opportunities to go see their business partners and work with them. So pretty cool kinds of concept as we continue to grow the career academies across the state. We know from national research that these kinds of things happen. We proved it in 1 year. We'll see, we're going to continue this study over a longitudinal study over 5 or 6 years to really get some good data. But we're pretty confident in terms of what the academies are going to offer for students. I think we're going to see the same thing, and you heard some of that here in Grand Island. From effective career guidance, a couple of things we're doing. We're really starting to rethink career guidance. I don't want to say it's kind of the last thing on a counselor's plate, but sometimes it is because our school counselors are just overwhelmed. They have so many things to do, and they have these bizarre ratios of 1 to 250, 300 students, and so it's like, how in the world do you ever do that? So our thought is, let's figure out how do we really engage parents, and how do we educate parents about where the careers are, where the opportunities are, change some stereotypes about some of the careers. How do we engage the community to help? How do we get other teachers involved in the career guidance? So it's not just the counselor's job. So we're really, again, focusing on the workforce projections and economic priorities. But this is our new tagline. Pursue the right education for the career that you want to choose. Don't automatically assume that you have to go get a 4-year or you have to go get a 2-year. Maybe it's a certificate. Maybe it's on-the-job training, whatever it might be. So we just need to educate them about the possibilities of what they are. One of the things we're working on is a parent video. And it'll be a short, about a 10-minute video that helps provide that kind of information to parents. So we're working with a professional company, and I'm going to show you a video a little bit later from some of our career tours. It'll be done in a similar fashion, but really talks to them about where the jobs are, where do I get this kind of information, who do I talk to, what do labor market projections mean, how do we work with those? So we're excited about that. We're working with Education Quest. If you're familiar with Education Quest, they do a lot of work with college and career planning. They're helping us develop the video, and they will be utilizing it. Partnerships, huge for what we want to do. Our good friends at the Department of Labor and Economic Development. In my history, I don't think we have ever had this tight of a working relationship between economic development, labor, and education. It's just coming together, and we only anticipate more as we continue to work together. I know Linda's going to talk with you a little bit about industry councils, the H3 website, and I didn't put the link up there. Are you familiar with the H3 website? Hopefully, it's out there. You can go in there for real-time data about where the jobs are, by your county, etc. The career readiness modules, you have a handout about that. These are available, and you can see the link is on here someplace, maybe in the back. Well, it used to be. Oh, it is, up right here in front. We developed these with a grant with the Department of Labor. So these are available 24/7. They're available to anybody. They can go out and watch these. They were developed by Nebraska ETV. And they're really well done. We have a lot of schools use these to help explain some of the kinds of things that Steph was talking about in terms of those soft skills that are out there. And then we also have some teacher effectiveness modules that are there. Oops. When we talk about work-based learning, this is an area that we really need some help. Okay. I share these slides a lot because I think it illustrates, and these aren't necessarily Nebraska students, but this is a national study. The reality of today's youth entering the workforce. This is a Rice University study that was done in 2013. 75% of our students do not qualify for military service. Why?
High school.
High school, graduation, grades, what else? Out of shape, physical fitness, what else? Incarceration, been in trouble with the law. There's another biggie. The military is at a point in time where if you have been on any kind of medication, they look very, very carefully. Now, they used to just overlook that, but you think about the number of kids that are on all kinds of things for ADD or whatever. And we've been doing a lot of work with Boys Town. Boys Town forever has had a direct link to the military because it's a great opportunity for those kids. They can't get in anymore. So Boys Town is rebuilding a career tech program because they got to build skills in there to get those students employed because the military won't touch them because they've been in trouble with the law, they've had alcohol abuse, or they've had drugs in somewhere in their past. So it's a real issue around that. 74% of them have never worked more than 1 hour a week. As I talk with employers, this keeps coming up. And we're going to try and do a study in Nebraska to say how true is that in Nebraska. But it is. As I talk to a lot of kids and a lot of parents, they're like, yeah. Well, number one, there aren't a lot of jobs out there for those high school kids anymore, and they have not had the same experiences that I had growing up to know what work is about, to know what it means to show up on time, to have a boss that I have to listen to and do what I'm told. I have to dress a certain way. I have to, those kinds of things are lost when they've never worked. So imagine, if you will, you're an employer and you've got a college graduate that walks out that has never held a job. Wow, a little scary. I have a good friend of mine at Kawasaki in Lincoln. He does some of their hiring. He tells this story all the time, and I love it. It was a college graduate from UNL, top of the class, engineering graduate. They were so impressed. They brought the young man in, sat down, had a great interview, got to the very end and asked that famous question, what questions do you have of us? He whips open his portfolio and he starts off and says, well, I saw the coffee maker, but I didn't see the cappuccino machine. I need to have my cappuccino. I need to be gone by 3 o'clock on Fridays because I have a heavy social schedule and my friends and I usually get together about 5, and went through this entire list of his demands for him to come work at Kawasaki. Well, the interview was over. Of course, you know what happened to that application. Did not get the job. And it's like, of all the arrogance to think that you, as a brand new college graduate, first-time hire, can walk in and make those demands, but that's not unusual. We kind of have an entitlement generation moving through the system. Anybody want to agree with that? Okay, so you can see some of the other things. This one also scares me to death. If you think about high school and college, and most of these are college graduates that have $25,000 or more consumer debt. That's not paying off a house. That's sitting on their credit card. That's not even student loans. This is just consumer debt. Wow. Can you imagine starting life with $25,000 in consumer debt in addition to college loans, et cetera, et cetera? Pretty tough. We wonder some things. Here's another study that USA Today did. 40% believe that these students believe they should be promoted every 2 years regardless of their performance. I deserve it. 60% think that they're just going to know what to do in any situation. I don't need a policy manual. I don't need rules and regulations. I'll just figure it out. 75% admit to cheating regularly in high school and college. And this one I love. This is actually a new medical term. 70% of students have experienced phantom pocket vibrator syndrome. They feel their phone vibrating against their leg when their phone isn't even in their pocket. because they have had, it just does it constantly. So a couple of other things that this study's done. So, I mean, it gives you a little bit of now this is kind of a downer, but it gives you a little bit of an indication of where our workforce is potentially coming from. And so we need to change the direction, and we need to really get purposeful about some of the things that we're going to do. This just goes through, this is another study that was done, and it talks about where students are deficient. So these were high school graduates. This study was done in 2007 and was revalidated in 2013. So you see 80% professionalism, work ethic, showing up for on time, accepting responsibility, dressing appropriately, etc. So if you think high school graduates are an issue, take a look at this. This is what they said about 2-year college and 4-year college grads. The one that scares me the most is look at the number one thing on 4-year college grads. 95.4%. They said they were deficient in oral communication. Well, think about how young people communicate today. So to have a conversation, to use real words and have a conversation is a little bit beyond their skill set at this point. We've not done that as much, but so I thought those were kind of interesting as well. This just goes on and says, here's where we think that we really need to do some work. These are areas that it's going to become more important. Critical thinking, problem solving, at the application of information technology, teamwork, creativity, and of course diversity. So this is, so what we're looking for is ways that we can expand work-based learning. And we're going to have a meeting in May where we're going to bring together some people, and I talked to Steph about this, because it's really different. We used to have co-op DO programs in all of our high schools. Well, it's really tough to do that because of new OSHA laws and HIPAA laws and everything else. So how do we get young people exposed to business and industry? You know, are there meaningful ways to do job shadowing? Are there, what kinds of things we can do? So we're going to bring a little summit together of some great minds. So if you want to be a part of that, let me know. But just to say, what could we do? And how could we get business and industry engaged with young people? So there's a lot of opportunities. This is our career tours. There it is. This is a partnership that we've developed with Labor and Economic Development. And I'm going to show you one of these just to give you a taste, I hope. There it goes. And this is just one business. Maybe not. Oh, this goes to the camera. Okay, well, this may not.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your company? Sure. Well, we're a high-tech, fast-to-market engineering, design, manufacturing, and repair company for medical devices. That's medical equipment all over the planet, basically, to really help assess problems, clinical problems in humans. Okay. Dogs, too.
Nice, dogs?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. And so you deal specifically with MRI?
That's correct. MRI is this huge piece of equipment that uses radio frequencies, magnetic fields. Every big hospital has one, and that's really where you go when you're a sick patient. You really have a serious problem. Or maybe it's not so serious, it's just a torn ACL or something. Maybe a numbness in your arm, maybe it's a pinched nerve. MRI is really the only thing that can really assess what the problem is deep down. And what my company does is we design the antennas for those MRIs. And those antennas greatly accentuate that signal coming back and give the doctor a lot better picture of what's going on inside the body.
Oh, so you're like making a digital camera that's like better and better and better.
Better camera, better antenna. Absolutely.
Cool. And so what kind of different educational backgrounds are you going to find here?
Sure. Anywhere from PhD electrical engineers down to assembly people that came right out of high school, to those that have 2-year degrees in different technologies, CAD, drafting, three-dimensional design. We have mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. We have painters, carpenters, you name it. It's across the board.
Wow. Well, I love what you guys are doing here, and I'm excited to learn more about it.
Super. Let's do it. Well, Andy, this is the first stop in our tour. This is our engineering and development laboratory. We employ all kinds of folks here. We have electrical engineers, electronic technicians, we do 2-year degree types. We have more advanced engineers working here, product engineers.
You're up. Anyway, you get a bit of a flavor. Because of time, we won't show you the whole thing. But anycareertours.com, we are going out and actually visiting Nebraska businesses. And Andy, who's awesome, interviews these folks. And he talks about, so what does it take to work here? What kind of jobs? You know, and it helps them. Our intent was to help Nebraska students know what kinds of jobs we have right here in the state. Who knew that ScanMed in Omaha makes antennas for every MRI in the country and is developing a brand new thing with the Netherlands around a whole new concept of MRIs. Didn't even know that was going on in Omaha. But we've got it from all across the state. We've been interviewing companies. We've been bringing them on. We're going to have one for each of the 16 career clusters. And then within each one of those, there's 3 businesses that we visit. And so we've been to Chief Industries here in Grand Island. We've been to a variety of places. So some of them are done. Some of them are still in production. But we hope that will help educate young people about the kinds of career opportunities that are here. So I'm going to turn the program over to Linda, and she's going to talk with you a little bit about some of the great work the Department of Economic Development has been doing.
And then was hired into the, let me get the right, Industry Cluster Initiative Program Manager as of January of 2013. One of the primary goals of this initiative is to develop and support industry councils and the program of work they determine. So again, that business partnership with the education and government all working together is what's really going to solve, or hopefully start down the right road to solve these problems, because we hear it across the state. Doesn't matter the size of the community, the number of kids in the school, it's out there. Whether the employer has 2 employees or 200, we hear the same thing. So I really am excited about how this is going, and I had all these thoughts of how I was going to introduce this and what my concerns, because I was the one that was talking, I was going to get to say them, and they hit them all. So I'm just thrilled that it's all being addressed. And so, your turn.
And I was just glad she didn't have time to do my bio. Yeah, right. Okay. As Pat said, this is a position that started a year ago, last month. So it's a fairly new position, and it's been really interesting. It's taken us down paths that we had no idea we were going to go down, I'll be honest. We knew we'd be working a lot with the secondary, post-secondary. Who knew we'd be working with preschool programs and elementary? I mean, it's critical. It is really critical. A couple of points that Rich brought up. Over 16% of our kids across the nation don't have jobs, and part of it is because people like us can't afford to retire, you know, are for whatever reason. So I'm going to give kind of a broad overview of where the clusters, why is this even part of the talk today, and then just some more down into the basic. And I hope this works. Okay. First of all, I was privileged to be able to go to that whole Pathways to Prosperity program that they did at Harvard a year ago in Boston. It was actually, we were in Boston on St. Patrick's Day. And
In a meeting.
in a meeting. Oh, but it sounds much more exciting. Yes, we were in a meeting. We were in meetings all for 3 full days. But anyway, clusters help align economic policy to everything that goes on. And within our department, we have several we have people that work in recruitment, we have people that work with international, we have the field staff that works with existing business all the time with our business, with a lot of things, but a lot with our business surveys. We have research and development now. And so all of that has got to be influenced or influences what's happening within our clusters. And I've got to tell you, there's a lot of organic things going on in the state that we have nothing to do with, but when you look at it, it's like, that's what clustering is all about. An example is an announcement that just went up at Norfolk, like 2 weeks ago. They had, from a business visit, they knew there was an issue with suppliers. They had people with personal relationships that they knew they wanted to, I mean, that is a perfect example of how clustering should work. And we're working very hard within the agency then to try to figure out how that all is going to flow. Exports, natural resource protection, all of these things. I'm not going to read through every slide, but if you have a question, please let me know, because I'd be glad to try to explain it. Oops, wrong one, sorry. I gotta get my finger on the right button. Clusters are interconnected companies, suppliers, distribution channels, manufacturing, companies related by skills, technologies, common inputs, and then related institutions, and that's where the secondary, post-secondary, all of that comes into play. This is an example, and I apologize, this is one that shows the flooding up in that area. And this is in Blair, Nebraska, the Cargill campus. But I wanted to show the overview, and I couldn't find one that didn't have the flooding. But this started back in the early 90s with the Cargill corn milling plant. And since then, due to the clustering type efforts, this has over 8 international companies on that campus. Doing things with polymers, doing things with the inputs to that plant, doing things with things that are coming off of that plant, out of that plant. And they just had, back in 2012, I think it was, Novozymes came, which is a Danish company, right, Mary? And they're now doing things on that campus. But that's an example of how clustering works. This is just a really bad map, and I apologize. The one that comes off the internet's really bad. You guys fix that. You've probably seen this as we've gone around into the rooms. These are the 16 areas that the Department of Education has to develop their curriculum and things around. We are not working with quite that many. The Patel study back in 2010, there were 12 identified clusters, and they generally fell within 3 categories: potential, emerging, and mature. And those companies that are mature are the ones that really should be getting attention. I mean, they all should be getting attention. But the mature ones really need some attention from the local developers, because they're the ones that maybe aren't looking at diversifying what they're doing. They may not have the technology they need to do that. They may not have the markets to do that. I mean, seriously, that's the one that we need to help them think, how are we going to continue to be strong in a global economy? Within all of these types of categories, then there have been different programs developed through our department, and we've seen a lot with the potential clusters. We're going into our 3rd year now of the T2 programs, and we're seeing now, it started here where there was money for prototyping, there was money to help with SBIR type grants, which is government contracting and things. Okay, that happened. We had a lot of interest in that beginning one, in those beginning 2 with the prototyping. That's gone through now, where we're seeing the applications come in. They've gone through the prototyping part. They're now ready for the commercialization. We didn't have anything spent for the commercialization for the first year and a half. People weren't to that point yet. So now they're there, and we're seeing a lot of applications come in for the commercialization piece of it. So there's been, where you see the curve like this, where companies, there's resources, but then there's that valley of death. The prototyping is the valley of death. If they don't get help getting that to be able to get to commercialization to make that part of their company, that's a deficit. So we've really tried hard to come up with programs to help for those different curves and peaks and valleys. The four industries that we have chosen to work with initially, and that's not to say that they're not all important, but these 4, high demand, high skill, high wage, thank you, are kind of a criteria that we looked at. The department has dedicated staff to 2 of these councils. We have staff that are not, that's not their job, but they participate in the council meetings of the other 2. At this point in time, there's the H3, and this is the one that you said you didn't have, but it's that h3.ne.gov/H3. That takes you to what, and we're working actually with whoever runs these websites. I got to tell you, I didn't realize how naive I am when it comes to website development. But we're working whoever, because we want it to be so when that comes up, we can actually put in like information technology, and those will be the jobs that show up instead of all of the jobs from all over the state. Or it can be a geographical type search for the types of jobs. So we're in constant We've actually been having some meetings about that. Our existing cluster councils then, this is, and I'm not going to try to go to these websites because of time constraints, but nebraskamanufacturing.com. Whitney Baumgartner is the dedicated staff to that. She is kind of like their eyes and ears, arms, and they have identified 3, well, it's actually 4 now, things that they want to work on as a council. The councils, we are very deliberate in that there are industry people on the councils. Education and labor are there, secondary, community college, whatever, they're invited to the table, but the people that have the power to make the decisions and drive what those councils are the industry folks. And so that's where, when we have teamed up with education, right now we've got going out to the councils, they are redoing some of their soft skill, real life things for their curriculum. And Corey emailed me about 2 weeks ago and said, hey, we need real life examples that we can include into our curriculum so they can actually use those in the classrooms. And so that's going out, and hopefully we'll get some response from manufacturers, because we hear that. We hear that from the industry, that this is a problem. Okay, if it's a problem, we need your help. How do we address it? What are you seeing? So anyway, these websites have a lot of information. The Logistics Council, we work in conjunction with, that has Larry Johnson as executive director. We don't have staff dedicated to that, but we are working with them whenever they need help. Sometimes there's some research that we help with. I'm actually going to, I think I'm going to be speaking next week to the supply management chain, which is, and then Larry and I are going to do some co-teaming there. Bio Nebraska, Phil Kazera out of Kearney actually is their executive director and works a lot with bio across the state. We actually have 2 people within our department that are working with bio, because we have the bio that's like the pharmaceutical with the University Medical Center, those kinds of bio, and then we have the bio that's over here that's more farm related and agriculture and ethanol plant type things. So we have 2 different people that are actually sitting in on these councils and providing whatever, help we can be. The International Bio Conference is coming up. We have teamed with them now for several years, actually participated, helped support it, and have come up with the brochures that they use that show how we do have bio across the state. Sometimes that perception thing, it's interesting to me. All of the councils want to address the perception of what their jobs are within the state and out of the state. That to me was a real eye-opener. And then we've got the Information Technology Council, which I got to tell you, these guys are a hoot to work with. They're totally different. They don't want to meet. These meetings, if we're going to meet, Rich can speak to this. Our first meeting, I thought we were going to have to go around and tie people down in the chairs, because it's like, well, if we want it done, we just do it. It's like, okay, so do we need a council? Well, we could, Well, we've had 2 meetings. We've had 2 meetings. They are now divided into subgroups. They're looking at how they're going to form a state association. They're looking at how they're going to have a website put up. They're going to just do it themselves, but they want help doing it, and they want. So Jacob Knudsen is our person at the department that is there. This has been a real stretch for Jacob. I give him credit. He's really gotten in there. He's probably visited in the last 6 months over 60 IT companies across the state, and it's going to be interesting. We don't have a website for them yet because they don't want to put anything out there just yet because they're not quite ready, but they're really getting close. I mean, I think it's going to be developed by next week. And we just met like 3 weeks ago. It's been really interesting. They also want to address some legislative things. And so we have to work our way through how that's going to work with them. They, though, have got to be the ones that work with education, because they know what their needs are, and how they do it here with their councils is wonderful. It's real time, it's rapid turnaround for what is needed, and I think that's sometimes a challenge for our post-secondary. Manufacturing, IT, everything, it turns on a dime, and if you can't respond quickly, it's the students that suffer. I mean, they're not getting the training they need when they come out. So one of the things, we're working alongside our business leaders, education, labor, community colleges, universities, NROC, which is the districts, and then others as appropriate. I should have put utilities. I mean, there's just the more we learn about who's trying to address some of these things, the more we realize there's partners all over the state, and trying to get them all to the table and get them headed in the same direction. I had a herding cats little video up here, and I was told I probably shouldn't play that. Yeah, anyway. 3 things. We want to expose students to what's available. Expose them to what the possibilities are. I don't know about you guys, but I would love to have had this kind of an opportunity when I was in school. I came out of a time when I could be a nurse or a teacher, or I could be Mrs. It's like, hello. And then we want to drive students into enrollment, and that might be, I shouldn't say only because it's not only, that might be into 4-year, it might be into 2-year, it might be into the certification program. And then the ultimate goal is to have them have employment. Our intern Nebraska program is now in a point where we can have some actual real-time data, and it's over 50% of those students who have gotten interns across the state that are staying in the state with the companies they either interned at or with a similar company within the state. 25% are still in school, have some more to do, and then 25% just didn't know for sure what they were going to do. So that's pretty good. That's 50% of those kids back into companies, and it's been pretty evenly distributed across the state. So Michael Cohen with the Achieve program I don't know if any of you were at the State Chamber last week. I just pulled 4 of his statistics because our high school graduation rate is 88%, and you look at the national average, it's 80%, and it shows you how we're in comparison to some of the other states. That's acceptable. It's not great. It's college enrollment coming out of there, 70%. National average is 63%, and again, it shows what it is across the states. However, actually graduating and getting out with the post-secondary, 56%. That's a lot of money down the drain for not coming out with a degree or a marketable whatever. There's a lot of reasons, and I'm sorry, this was a pretty long presentation. I would suggest that possibly part of that reason is that students are being encouraged or are going into areas that really aren't their natural aptitude. Whether it be whatever it is. We have got to seriously look at that.
Is that including certificates or is that diploma degree?
I think that was just degree, like 4-year, yeah, is my understanding. This is just indicators for that value college and career readiness. Exceeding would be if they're participating in the advanced placement, the international baccalaureate, or dual enrollment. And I think we have several schools that are doing that. That whole thing, and Bill, you can speak to this because I know it's been a challenge from the day one, but getting that dual, allowing teachers here to teach, to accept what's been taught here, over here, I mean, that is a challenge within our state. Our autonomy sometimes works against us. And I'm just going to put it out there because we're seeing it. It's our school systems. We can put these videos out. We can work on these. They're available. The school systems don't have to use them. So as parents, as people within your school district, ask your schools, are you aware of these? And if you're aware, are you using them? I mean, that awareness has got to start at that very low level. And then there's, of course, the earning dual enrollment credits and the application to an enrollment in post-secondary, whatever that might look like. We have a lot of opportunities to close the skill gap. And I know these guys are working, I know this is getting worked on. Adopt higher expectations, increase school competitions, collaboration. It's been interesting. When it was the second week I was in this new position, I got sent to a meeting where I got elected vice chair of this committee. It's like, what the heck? Who are you guys? What are you doing? But it's that collaborative thing. We are now in a position where there's federal things coming down the pike. We are ready to jump on them because we have the MOUs, we have things in place with a lot of different agencies within the state. And it's been a really good experience. Modernize the curriculum, everything that we've been talking about. Vocational education, better alignment of job training programs with local and regional work opportunities. And then the community colleges to provide vocational specialty training, and I think they do a pretty darn good job in most areas. I think we've got some gaps in some areas, but you know what? We're getting there. And then greater public-private sector collaboration. We've got to share our resources. We've got to have joint programming. We've got to have this consistency across the board. Yes, my program is great, but you know what? This program over here thinks they're great. We do our students a disservice when we don't allow, when we can't get consistency with what's being expected. I have a nephew that has paid for the same course 3 times because he's been in 3 different institutions. That should, and it's a basic English course. So anyway, communicate, and then take action. We've just got to communicate constantly. And sometimes it feels redundant. I'm sending Rich stuff all the time, and sometimes I get a reply, and sometimes I wonder if it goes into outer space.
I always read it.
And businesses are critical to these efforts, and this is where the councils have been really, really valuable, because when we meet, we bring in people that actually need to be talking to these industries. It's interesting because we have heard all the way from schools that, well, it's hard to get businesses to talk to us, but we've also heard from businesses it's really hard to talk to the school systems and the secondary systems, and the school systems particularly. But once they get that connection made, then there can be a lot more sharing of needs and how that can be addressed. And there's a lot of people that are actually in the businesses that would be willing to come in and share what they know, if that could be allowed. And I know we've had this discussion, how do we make that work? But this work and training opportunity, it's not a philanthropy thing. It's going to be a strategic investment for the future, because our kids have got to be, and I say our kids, it's not just our kids, it's all of our workforce, you know, have got to be ready to take the jobs that are coming. I can't even tell you the number off the top of my head. It's something like 400,000 is going to be available by the year 2020. It's huge. But anyway, that's kind of my, and if you didn't get one of these, the statistics that are listed in that under each of those 4 areas came from Department of Labor. They have access to a lot of information across the states and international. So if you have any questions on that, please ask me. And thank you very much for asking me to be a part of this.